Hello, everyone. Abilio Talks here. Thursday night, Thursday end of the day to Melbourne, not Adelaide. So it's still day of that?
It is a beautiful day outside. I'm looking out the window that I finally installed here in the man cave.
Okay.
It is blue skies. It looks lovely out there.
Nice, nice. And we are starting a new season, a new series on Abilio Talks channel, and it is called Bits and Beer. And it is a plan that I have with Damon for ages. So we have our beer in hands. Cheers for that.
Cheers. It's
And
about time, really.
it is
It
about
really
time,
is.
right? So the last time that we had a beer was on
Right.
Sydney Tech U
Yeah.
2019.
2019. And look, the world's changed a lot since then, hasn't it? But
A lot, a lot.
there's a wonderful camaraderie that we have over a few beers that we shared a few times, Abilio. So in essence and in spirit, I'm looking forward to having a catch up with a cold beverage nearby. For real next time.
For you. Yeah, that's crossing fingers for that. Yeah. No, you guys have a few moments of freedom, right? So we still lock it on level 3. So
Yeah,
hopefully next week we will better, but let's see.
we'll
So
see.
Demo and I were here to drink beer and talk about IT. So I don't have a clue on what this is will take us, and hopefully that will take us in a very good place. And I will start chasing some facts that I was reading that some organizations they just stated that due to the COVID pandemic, the organizations will speed up a lot the digital transformation.
Mm.
So, and that's a concern because some of them are not ready to um, to start this transformation, or they already pause it, or they roll back because of the COVID. So, and we still know that there is lots of potential when you deal with data, right? So, Damon, let me start you. I will throw a bomb for you to so you can fix that. And
I'll do my best.
how would you approach today, nowadays, a conversation with an executive when discussing information architecture for example, edge computing and IoT devices? That's something that I'm studying a lot lately. So, is there a good way, a right way of approaching how you do? Well, what do you say about it?
Look, there's probably about three ways we see people approach things, right? You've got uh, people who work from the perspective of we need it right now. So it's almost like the emergency. And so they take a lot of shortcuts, don't they, to get to where they're going. And in the main, it's a bit like hopping into a car. As long as the car starts, it's going to drive and take you to your destination. The problem is when you're in that emergency phase, you make decisions not necessarily rashly, but you make them in a hurry. And so you might not take into consideration everything that you might need. So when you hop into that car, you might not necessarily take in consideration that you need to tow something heavy, or you need to fit more than two people in it, or is where you're going to have the right fuel. And so that you start making these considerations, the more time you have, the more reflection you have on whether or not you're making the right decision. So that emergency, that initial hurry up to make a decision, that's typically one way that some organizations make decisions. Another way is repeating what they've done before. That's that level of comfort. And so they go, well, we've been doing the same thing for the last 5, 10, 15 years,
Mhm.
and it's suited us well. We're not planning on doing anything really different. We're not talking to people about doing things differently. So why do we have to do things differently around what we do around our foundation there for these new technologies that we might be adopting, like IoT and whatnot. And then you have the third way, which is like the consultative approach. And this is now more akin, instead of just going to the car yard and buying the car and going, right, that's what I want, hop in and drive it. And it's not just hopping in for a quick test drive either. It's actually talking to someone there, getting an idea of what's available, maybe as extras for that car. Maybe there's another model that when that salesperson's talking to you, I know it's weird, we're talking about car salespeople, sometimes the least trusted people on the planet, but if they know what they're talking about, you get that feeling of trust, don't you? And
Yeah.
particularly if they're offering something that makes sense to you that you hadn't actually considered, and you might not be making that decision on that car straight away, because maybe you are still comfortable with what you have, and maybe it's not an emergency right now. So who else would you go and talk to? You might talk to a friend, maybe someone else who's got the same car. I know once I was buying a car, I actually stopped someone at the side of the road, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about buying the same car that you've got. What's the good and what's the bad about it? And we sat there for 15 minutes talking about it by the side of the road by his car.
Mhm.
So, you know, you talk to all types of people to get your advice. But the one thing that's really clear about all of those is, regardless of where the advice comes from, which decision you make to buy the car or whatever, at some point that decision puts you in a direction that you are then forced to continue on until you either go, that was a bad decision, or we're changing our mind and we're going to start again. So the foundation is critical. For what we're seeing about this digital transformation, organizations taking advantage of the fact they're coming out of COVID now, and they've had that time to reflect about not doing things the same way that they've done it before. Now they're looking consultatively at lots of different solutions, lots of different vendors. They're talking to lots of friends. They're stopping people by the side of the road and saying, I like that car, I'm thinking about buying it. What advice can you give me? What's good and what's bad with it? And we're seeing a real change now, aren't we, Abilio, about people being really informed when they come to make a decision about building that foundation. They're almost like these semi-experts to start with. They know, they're more informed, and they have a real consideration of what they want to do. And sometimes that's enough. You can make some great decisions.
Funny you say the example about cars, because I was talking to a client about the new IBM that we're talking about, the Kindle business that went down in a separate way, and how it is so exciting this moment, because I was explaining in the same analogy, but I took a little bit more, as being a technical guy, I took to the technical side. So imagine that we are offering, we have a trilogy inside IBM at the moment. So we have a unit that will take care of your experience. So just like a driving school, that will take you, so hey, this is what you can do when you are in a curve, doing a turn, and this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And our experiencing on the other cars, by the way, is doing this way is the better way. So better user experiencing, more profound insights on the data that the companies are collecting from their devices.
And maximizing their experience, really.
And maximizing their experiences. And that's our GBS. And then I was saying, hey, and when you get into the car and you turn on the key and you see all this technology. So you have my car, for example, he advised me that I'm running out of fuel, and he asked me, do you want me to look for a petrol station nearby? So you click yes, he will point you to.
I never click yes. I always click no. No, I know what I'm doing. And then I run out of fuel.
I have enough fuel for that. Yeah, don't bother me with this. So you have all the old software team that is now part of the technology unit, and of course we have us from the engine point of view, and a bit on the technology as well, providing speed, resilience, endurance to make the trip going smoothly. So yeah, that's fantastic. So
staying on the car analogy, Abilio, we're a bit like the Formula One team, except IBM at some point was like the different parts of the garage, so to speak. We got the engine developers here, and people who did the transmission over here, and the guys who did all the timing and the monitoring systems. And the difference now is that all this is all sort of being brought together, and instead of having 50 different engines to choose from and 50 different other parts of the team to come in, it's really got rationalized, hasn't it? It's got really focused at the moment, and and even taking away where the past experience, the past performance of that race car, so to speak, now saying this is what works really well, and this is what works well for us now, and this is what we think is going to work well for us in the future. But you know what? We're going to be adaptable to that change, and that's really exciting for me, because when I started at IBM, which is 6.5 years ago now, it'd be, I went to IBM because I saw just that first initial part of that change. And IBM's been almost ruthless, from my perspective, about being focused on this change to be better, to be more consultative with their customers. That people always trust IBM. That's almost taken for granted.
I agree.
But you can't be a master of everything, and no organization can. Yet IBM has been unique in that they find the masters to bring them in into the organization, and so that's fascinating to watch. And it's good to see that change is being reflected at that foundation level. Someone does make that request and say, "What do we do next?" We're embarking on this transformation journey. What do we do next? And we can take so many different approaches now for that customer. We can take that consultative perspective, GBS, now IBM Consulting, as it's called now. We can take them on a journey that goes beyond so many different levels of just the hardware, the software. Really, where is business value? Where is the differentiation?
And the feedback is being great, as far as I know. In the last 2 years, the feedback that I hear from clients is way positive. So that's brilliant, right? My 2 weeks ago, we were having an internal meeting here on the team, and one of the sellers, he's a pilot. He's a professional race car driver, right, sir? And then he did a demo about what's on IoT platform, right? And how he could extract value and insights and inference from the online telemetry on the car. And that's brilliant, because I told you that now I have the idea to do the same thing with my ultramarathon project. So I download all the manuals. I know all the videos. I bookmarked all the videos. So it's just time of putting in practice. However, that got me thinking. This type of thing is good. There is value, but it creates a huge amount of data, isn't it? So it's like we're talking. I was reading an article the other day. An airplane from Heathrow Airport to JFK, it produced 700 terabytes in one flight. That's one trip. So that's massive, right?
It's huge. It's huge. I've had some weird, or not weird, more exotic is the correct term, requests for data storage, and some of these are all types of sensors around the place. I was having a conversation with one of our peers, Dion. You'd know Dion, and we got talking about long range, low power sensor wireless networks. And there's a wonderful, I guess, wave or momentum where people are developing these device sensors for all sorts of purposes. It could be measuring foot traffic on a bridge. It could be how many cars are going past a certain point. It could be as simple as you're a farmer and you're counting how many of your sheep or cattle going past a post, because that's a way of keeping track of where your livestock are between paddocks. And, you know, in Australia and even in New Zealand, but we're not talking about small paddocks, are we? We're talking about things that are measured, in kilometres of distance and thousands of of head of livestock. And so, the old-fashioned way is what? You go out there and count them. As someone said, the way you count how many sheep you have is you count the legs and divide by 4. It just demonstrates just how difficult a process it is. And it gets to the point where the old way of doing it to keep track of your livestock is basically you round them up regularly, and you force them to go through a corridor made out of fence. And as they go through, it's like a turnstile. It hits the marker and it clicks and it goes, there's 1. And you go look at it and the counter is actually there. So at the end of the day, they look at the counter and they go, oh, we had 3,000 clicks on there. Now, is it entirely accurate? Well, the great story I had once was that they went through this process, and this particular ranch had something like 30,000 head of cattle, and it took them a week to go through and do the count. And where they do the count is shared between 2, cattle stations, basically. And what had happened, they realised that after the week of running everything through, that no one had zeroed out the count from when the neighbour had used it the week before. So then they had to go through, zero this little thing that was sitting on that turnstile to set it to 0 again and go through the count. So the modern application of this is, how do you enable an Internet of Things approach? They use drones now. They use artificial intelligence. They use
image recognition, right?
Yep. Yeah, and this stuff's pretty accurate. It's more than just pretty accurate. It's to a high certainty of accuracy that in some cases exceeds even a human ability. But this thing about a low-powered device with high range that people are building in their workshops, their man caves, their workbench in the shed or garage, and what they're doing here is that they're enabling the end delivery of a capability that before was measured by something that clicked as someone went past it or an animal went past it each time. And they're doing this because the battery system involved for enabling it, to making it work, is able to run for 12 months, 2 years from a single cell, because the power requirements are so low. The amount of data it generates is continuously ongoing, however. And even though the bandwidth for it's quite low as well, over time, thousands of these sensors that you put around the place all culminate and have to go somewhere. And it's still just raw data, isn't it?
Yep, indeed.
So where do they put that? What's the foundation that they build for that? And again, going back, does a farmer buy a 2-door sports coupe to go and round up his cattle with? No, he probably buys a utility vehicle with 4-wheel drive, because that's what's appropriate. But if he bought the 2-door sports car, at what level would he go to modifying that to make it work in that environment that it's not suited for?
Yep.
But in between that, there might be an SUV, for example, that could give him the utility component, but also maybe the sporty nature that so there's now something in between. And so now it's a consideration of what is the most appropriate, or sometimes better at doing both instead of just only one thing. And that's the other benefit too, then, around being very focused on your foundation, where you start on this journey of, if it's business transformation or digitization, if it's Internet of Things, the one common thing is that your data isn't going to shrink. It's going to keep growing.
Yep.
Honestly, 10 years ago, if someone came to you and said, we want to buy a 30 petabyte storage system, what would you say 10 years ago?
You're not going to use it.
Yeah. And you would even use 1 petabyte.
Yeah.
And literally in this week alone, I think I've seen come across my view, hundreds of petabytes of different systems in total. And we think this is now the normal thing. And even the costs of what they used to be, and the cost versus performance. We're fortunate from an IBM perspective that technology supports that.
And that's a good way of approaching it, I would say, because I was in my previous life at IBM Brazil. I was working in a project together with the analytics team at that time. We call it analytics at that time, and it is a perfume factory, right? So the use case. So this perfume factory, it has the fidelity card as any other store, right? And they realized that for some reason the buying behavior and and the rating of some products were just floating without no particular reason, and the perfumists, the perfume engineer, the chemical guys that know how to
What
mix
each little bit does and everything.
yeah, so like witchery, something like that. So they
Alchemist.
yeah. So hocus pocus, poof, something like that. And they realized that according to the temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and the distance between the equator line, was influencing the behavior of their clients.
Oh, really? Wow.
So they ask us a simple question: hey, can you match the geographic position of 2,000 stores and the whole America continent with the fidelity card? So the weather channel was already an IBM company. So can you mix those two and come up with some inferencing about what do I need to do in the same perfume in the south of the America continent that will not be applied in the Central America? So can you come up with these and say, wow, that's huge? And the storyteller was like, yeah, happy as hell because I'm going to sell 50 petabyte storage and they will use it. No. That doesn't make sense. That data belongs to the cloud. Weather channel data, it stays there. What you really need is the insights, the inferencing, and mainly the metadata, which is the identification of each component, right? And then people say, oh, okay. So there you go. Like 6 years ago, we were already talking about hybrid as a concept, right? So it's not anymore like I'm writing a polemic article like cloud as a practice, because everything is cloud at the moment. If you go to any IT vendor, any technology vendor, he was, oh yeah, everything is cloud, but not necessarily, right? So the way that we approach today is really comprehensive, because when we talk about cloud, we're not only talking about a physical location. It's not anymore only a physical location. There's way more than that. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, it's a huge one, because it's and I like your example there of, the old way was to build something monolithic, basically, and it was just for that purpose. But bringing in all these other aspects of other data points and data sources to inference with makes so much more sense. But you don't need to silo that up just as part of your capability. What you're building as a solution. What you need to do is take advantage of those data sources, and it's like shopping at the supermarket. You're picking out what you want, or it's like going to the library and picking your book.
I knew I was going to
I
ask
had to
you.
put that, had to put
Yes.
that in. Yeah, I had to put that in. Oh, you don't like that book? I'll get this book then. Hang on a second. There's this book instead. I look, it's the worst dad joke in the world with the virtual background of my bookcase here at home. Uh, so I like to keep the books handy at the background there to bring out. But
That's
if
a
it,
very good special effect. Way better than my ones there on my videos. Yeah, well done.
I look, I like your special effect at the moment of the studio in progress. So um, I can't wait to
Get
see
that? We'll get that.
yeah, it's not far away, which is good to see.
Yeah.
But you take all those points and you say, look, okay, where are we going? And effectively, we're talking about uh, data has an intrinsic value no matter where it sits. It's a bit like gold in the ground or oil under the ground, right?
Yep.
And we know it's valuable where it is, but until we use it, its value is not realized. And we can trade for that value. And the equivalent, I think, of trading in what we do in our roles, advising people as trusted advisors, uh, we're simply saying, don't you don't need to be stuck doing the same thing. You can do it a different way. It might be a better way of storing your data, but more importantly, there's got to be a better way of how you use that data. I was talking to someone earlier on today using spectrum discovery, just purely at that classification capability, going through an environment, and we're talking 80 to 90% of the data hadn't been touched for years. And yet, faithfully, every night, there's a backup made of that data. And why? Because, like gold or oil, the data has that intrinsic value. But in that current state where it hasn't been touched for years, it's only the value of what it is. We've still got to dig it up and use it.
Yep.
And it's really then about how we use that. Gold is intrinsic value because it holds a currency system, a way that we value things together. But oil, for example, can be used for many different things. We make plastics from it. We power vehicles. We launch, rocket ships using hydrocarbons, and so all these sorts of things all have all these different values. And so before, when you were saying, where it is, does it have value? Well, in this case, we got to get to it. We got to transform how we use it into something more valuable, more useful, and we're only just at the beginning of this, aren't we? About how we maximize the value of our data.
Oh, for sure. I like to call it enterprise amnesia.
Well,
If you don't have, imagine the following situation. If you have a data growth, a constant data growth of 10%, whatever, and you only make sense of a certain amount of data, right? So each month, as your data grows, you're making sense of less and less data. So discover, as you were saying, and well said, that breaks that type of vicious cycle, and you become more efficient on digging what is there on your data silos, for sure. Yeah.
and think even just on that intrinsic value statement. If someone came to you, like literally rings you now, 5 minutes from now, and you can hear the pain in their voice, they ring you up and they're saying, everything, everything's gone. Someone's deleted it. Someone's come in and just wiped the whole thing. It's gone. And if you were to say to them, all right, we know it's terabytes, petabytes of information that need to be restored. Forget about all the methods that they should have used to protect that data. Let's just say this is the scenario. It's all gone. The first thing I'd be saying to them is, what is the most valuable thing we need to recover first? That keeps your business operational and people are logging in tomorrow. And for so many different organizations, that identification of what's valuable is so different. For some, it's the payroll system. And so it can change on the day. So maybe payroll is only used once every 2 weeks, for example. So if everyone gets paid on Thursday, Friday night is the most important day for payroll, because that's when they process everything, and everyone wakes up the next day and they've got money that they've earned in their bank accounts. And if that doesn't work, doesn't matter if everything else is functional, for that one day, everything's broken as far as that organization is concerned. And user sentiment, your ability to trust that platform. Every time then you come to that Wednesday night to process it again and it breaks, because you remember how it broke, you're always thinking, is it going to do it again? Is that data going to be there? Bring it back to me if it's gone. And so, at different points, the data becomes more valuable because of how we're using it at that point in time as well. And if we look at that explosive growth of the Internet of Things, do I care about a paddock in the middle of Australia that's counted 5 sheep walking by? Well, one sensor in that pool of data that maybe has brought everything in isn't necessarily the hugest loss if that disappeared. But again, if they just spent a week counting all of that and recording it somewhere, it doesn't matter if it's changed from a clicker to the Internet of Things to do it. That data is no less valuable, and the time taken to generate it is equally as important as any other example for that person at that time. So if we go back to how we started the conversation, what comes first? Really, if you're flexible, you build the right foundation to start with.
Yep.
You talk to people about the scenarios of the what ifs, what happens if something goes wrong. We start talking about policies rather than systems, don't we?
Yeah, indeed.
What's the most important thing in your world? Payroll. Is it the product we make? We've got a prototype going out competitively. Are we protected against something that comes in and encrypts it with ransomware? People have so many different challenges now about protecting that data. So now we take it away from we're digging for the oil or the gold, and when we get to it, someone's put a cage around it and they've locked it up for us. We know it's still valuable, it's in there, but now we can't get to it. Now that's where we've progressed to. It's that we've invested everything to protect our data, and other people are trying to do nasty things to it all the time.
I was talking to Joe Martin, the security architect here in New Zealand, and I was doing a podcast about zero trust, and I was provoking him because he's a very, very technical guy. One of the most skilled persons I ever met in my entire life at IBM, and it is almost 2 decades. So he was scolding me what zero trust is, and just to make it a little bit of fun, I said, "Oh yeah, I got it. I had a girlfriend like this one day before, and it was like."
Where's this going?
It took him like 2 seconds to swap the
paradigm.
yeah, exactly like that, Abilio. You got the idea. So okay. And again, you're right. So it is not only technology, because security is process, people, and technology. So if you have the best technology ever, but if you don't have process, like twice a year we swap sites, or we like we have on our computers, and password policies, and so every single step is critical, right? Depending on the data that we're dealing with.
That's true.
Let me just roll back a little bit when we were saying about hybrid. I imagine that a certain company that we bought, we acquired like 2 years ago for just 34 bill, something like that.
Yeah, it's something about an article of clothing, certain color. Yeah.
So very cheap one, and
bargain.
That company has a very important play on that. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to then, what are we doing that defines this new world of how we work with data? And it's funny. I was having lunch with an old friend of mine that I haven't seen for a while. It's someone I worked with in the IT industry for quite some time, and then he had one of those paradigm shifts of his career, and he said one day, he goes, "I want to learn how to fly," and put him through himself through the training, and that was flying large passenger aircraft. I think it was the Boeing 777s he's rated on. COVID comes, and all of a sudden, pilots don't have jobs anymore. You know, if you're lucky to have a freight run or something like that, maybe, but you know, to a large extent, these fleets of planes are grounded, and so he's without a job. And he was originally based overseas with this role, and I remember just sending him a message just as COVID was hitting. I said, "Look, you know, whereabouts are you? Are you overseas? Or are you back in Australia?" And he goes, "Oh, I've managed to come back to Australia." Now, all sorts of things happen. He started working part-time for another friend of ours, basically just doing break fix stuff with computers, you know, fixing virus infections and things like that. Wow. And very smart guy, obviously knows how to fly a plane, for goodness sakes. That takes a lot of smarts. Yet very comfortable doing what he's doing because he knows his goal is to fly planes again. So I caught up with him for lunch, and we were talking about, you know, all these funny stories about, you know, the old days in IT, and we got talking about, you know, just some of those things around, because we both used to work at a security company, information security company, and we were talking about some of the things that we used to get up to get access to people's data as part of a, you know, an ethical penetration run in their environment.
Hacking, yep.
And we got thinking about how things have changed now, because, you know, phishing, for example, is one of the most successful social engineering means of getting access to people's data, getting access bypassing all those layers of protection. And we got thinking about what is the equivalent of phishing, but in like the live sense. And it could be as simple as we're doing this virtually now, right? But, you know, ideally, we want to be doing this in person. We want to, you know, grab our beers and have a chat. Maybe not necessarily record it at that point. It's a catch up, right? But maybe it's been 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You know, maybe I had hair 5 years ago. I didn't have hair 5 years ago. It's been a lot longer than that. But
I doubt of that.
But, you know, there'll be some subtle changes, right?
Yep.
And maybe, you know, it's a bit busy that day. There's lots of people going past, a bit distracted, and you look across and you go, "Damon, I'm sitting over here." And Damon comes and sits over there and starts talking to you, and he says, "Oh, by the way, can I borrow $20? I just need to go buy something there." And you go, "Yeah, no worries, Damon, have $20. And he walks off, and then the real Damon comes and sits down and says, "Abilio, how are you, man?" And he goes, "What? Didn't I just give you $20? And we were talking about just how simple that would be in a world where we put our faith and trust and process around visually identifying something.
Yep.
And now we can't even trust that because, you know, as my virtual background just showed, there is no actual bookshelf there. I can make it look like that by putting books nearby and bringing them in. But if you look closely, or you show that zero trust with every approach, you're going to go another step further, aren't you, about establishing that with zero trust, you've not trusted anything to start with. You're always on that perception that everything could potentially be a threat. And so you'll go, just as you hand over that $20 to me, you will say, "Oh, actually, can I see some ID first?" Okay.
Instead of perimeter. Yeah, instead of perimeter.
Right. You start establishing because in that case, in that discussion, we're already inside the perimeter, aren't we? I've sat down at the table. We've already shared a beer, and I've just said, "Can I borrow $20?" And yet you're still in the back of your mind going, "I'm only 90% sure that's Damon because it's been 5 years since I've seen him." Yeah. And boy, he's somehow lost even more hair than he lost before, and he's definitely a lot fatter than he was as well. So, but these things, they're constantly changing, constantly evolving. But the one thing that seems to never change is the foundation we execute them from.
Yep.
It might look different. It might be on cloud, so it looks different. But that cloud's built with a foundation that's meant to be flexible. Your on-premises environment the way you build your hybrid cloud model should be no less different. The foundation is the absolute most important thing. And if you're rushed, if it's an emergency, that foundation is going to wash away eventually. And it's going to be when you put the most pressure on it, it's just going to fall apart. If you build something that's just not flexible enough, it could be the strongest foundation in the world, but you can't use it for anything useful because it was only suited for one thing. Whereas if somewhere in between that, you've got the right advice, you've put the right foundation in that's flexible, so maybe your house isn't going to be one story all the time, you're going to build another story on it. Well, you can. Or if you want to downsize a little bit, maybe you want to open up the rooms inside. Maybe that's what you decided to do. But if the foundation for it enables it, it's flexible enough to be able to do those changes. You can adapt to what you want to do.
Yep, indeed.
The biggest thing about
without rebuilding everything, bro.
Yes, the biggest thing about hybrid is that, or any cloud, we all went to cloud we all thought this is great. You know, I'm going to be able to, waterfall over. I can overflow into cloud. Oh, it was cheaper and easier to keep it in cloud after that. Well, it's not necessarily the case anymore. Cloud's not necessarily the cheapest option.
Yeah, especially when you do like lifting, shifting, right? So that's why everything needs to come together, because if you just pick your stuff that you have on-prem and let's put it there, it will not be cheaper. Now, if you modernize your applications, like we were saying, and you were taking an approach, you build your flexible foundation, regardless the physical place that you are running your business, that's the place that you're going. So and that's how I see OpenShift as important, because imagine I was talking to one client, imagine a Linux One, big server, amazing, based on mainframe hardware, the most reliable machine ever.
Cloud in a box, basically.
Yeah,
cloud in a box.
And you put OpenShift on it. So doing your transformation journey, you have on-premise monolithic. I don't like to call it monolithic applications because that put the application down, and
fit for purpose.
Fit for purpose application, or the current application, and you have the containerized microservice application as well. But you want to keep your costs down. That's why you need to go hybrid. And he was saying, oh, can I put my traditional current applications and the containers in the same physical space? Sure.
Yeah,
that's why we have OpenShift to allow you, because the modernizing your process and your application, that will take some time, and you know that, because a changing process means educating people to do things differently, regardless of the technology, right?
Yeah.
And that's why if you have a box, like you said, that can run your today and your future.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, I look at it from the perspective, we all tinker with what we do at work, at home, and more so lately because we haven't had a choice. If we want to go and play with something, get our hands on it, it's what we've got readily available in our own homes. And for me, it was about rebuilding my home NAS. The singular thing that's important for me is where we back up our photos to from our various, cameras and phones and whatnot. And if that stuff disappeared, I might as well disappear with it, because my family wouldn't be happy with me, right? So I've got a backup here where I'm sitting right now. There's a backup. There's a backup of a basic. I think it's about 9 years old, an old Netgear NAS, very capable, very dumb. Does what it has to do. Is a great rsync location. And then I've got what was my old gaming PC with a huge tower, heaps of drive bays in it. And I took advantage of some sales one time last year, and I put a bunch of high density drives in there. I also took advantage of some cool software that we make available for employees inside IBM to play with this sort of stuff. But effectively built an OpenShift environment at home. And it was funny. I've got these old HP and compact, like I'm talking compact HP servers. They're old, they're ancient. But I tell you what, they're bulletproof. I got some old X series IBM servers, an X345, that I think uses more power than anything else in my entire house. But it's rock solid. It's 14 years old and it still works. And it's telling that these things were valuable to me to keep using because I knew how much they cost originally. And that's how I justified keeping them there. And they would use, I think that, 16 gig of memory, and one's got 32 gig of memory. And so it's just enough to play with virtualization. Going to OpenShift, every single virtual machine that I was running previously is now converted to a container in some form. Be it what runs my firewall, my DNS servers internally. So, where I block ads from and things like that. All of these are using less than 4 gig of the equivalent of memory. Whereas before I was running around 48 gig of memory and churning. It was doing it tough. If that was the singular thing that I took from containerization, forget how easy it is to roll out things, to roll back, roll forward, to really change how your iterations of application development work. Forget about being able to rapidly add features by bringing in something off the shelf as a container and just going, well, that's fit for use now. And that becomes what I replace what was monolithic before, or my current app before. Forget all that, how easy that stuff is. Just the sheer efficiency of doing it now. And I don't have to worry about updating 15 different operating systems. The updates I do at a core level, and then I just distribute that. And you know what? If someone's doing what I'm playing around with as a hobby better out there in the open source world, I grab a config file from them and I build it. And exactly how they've got their environment, I go to GitHub and I download it, and I can run my iteration next side by. I can compare the two, and it takes me literally as long as it takes to download that config file to build it.
Amazing.
In the old world, we started off we had to build a server. That would take a day, and then it's now just a virtual machine, and it took an hour or so. Now it's a container, and it takes me seconds. This is utopia.
Yep.
And it's freed us now. This is the flexible foundation we were looking for. The core infrastructure piece is still there. You still need compute. You still need the storage to put it on. We need the connectivity to get to it. And then we put the policy pieces, security and everything else around it. That's fine. But now we can take that little piece that works flexibly in my environment here. And if I wanted to say, all right, let's turn this into a production world, I go put it, if it makes sense, on Azure or AWS, IBM Cloud. I can keep running it on premise. I can even choose to split it between where I'm running it in that full hybrid sense. I could choose to keep it running locally because my storage costs less there and it's more performant for me, for what I want to use it for. But the outcome of it, what it delivers, could be still delivered from something front-ending as a microservice on a container in the cloud. So right. What a world we live in.
True.
Strangely enough, we don't see a huge amount of this adoption yet, do we? With containerization, we see some organizations go, it makes sense. But
lots of development, and
huge.
lots of testing environments. Yeah, that's true. There is a big telco here that is very, very advanced on the container point of view. So they're doing lots of improvement on their services. They're already a Red Hat client, and now we are planning some information architecture with them. So yeah, but you're right. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because my recollection of virtualization in this side of the world was that within a year, 12 months, 12 to 18 months, there was such a significant adoption of virtualization technology that it was rare
It feels like
physical
you know
world.
what it feels like. It feels like when we were approaching Linux
Yeah,
before IBM bought it,
yeah,
before IBM started sponsoring very heavily.
yeah. When they before they became this patron of open source, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it looks like I don't know. It's just a feeling. I'm not sure about that. I don't have data. I don't talking about that. I don't have stats on that.
If you've had a chance, or maybe not, and I've looked at it only briefly, IBM's released their Q3 earnings and data for that today, and the clear thing for me is that investment of that scarlet colored headwear company, Red Hat, uh, you know, huge investment. You know, you've got to be pretty sure when you invest $30+ billion buying something that it's going to be fit for what you want to use it for. The key thing is that inside our business, we're seeing it's not just about profit of that as a business unit. It's what it's enabling for IBM all the way through, from development of new technology to the sponsorship and adoption of new ways of training children around the world to adopt these STEM fields, to be able to actually change a culture where IBM was always considered this rock solid, very dependable organization, but a bit like that container ship in the ocean or the oil tanker, very powerful, but really slow to move direction, now
Mhm.
being incredibly agile by adopting the same principles of that organization that we now partner with at the hip inside. So by our very adoption of the technologies, it's almost like we've taken on board that philosophy that Red Hat's so strong with about being very flexible in everything they do, uh, as long as it is to the advantage of the customer. And we've always
I,
had at IBM the customer's advantage comes first, right? They need to be successful for us to be successful. But now we've got that agility and flexibility. We're able to build our foundation, our supporting products. Where we work in the storage component for IBM. What a great time to be working at IBM to enable these technologies to help
oh,
build that same
yep.
foundation.
Tell me about it. Yep, yep. And indeed, I totally agree. Um, I was one of my videos. I quote a sentence, a statement from our founder Thomas Watson in probably 10 articles and 3 or 4 videos, but I just love it. You need to be more than a machine. If people were willing to think, all problems of the world would be easily settled. So something like this, but that's really true, right? And
Mm.
it is
Maybe
simple.
that's another conversation we can have just around that topic. To be honest, that's
Oh, oh, for sure. Because when you have simplistic solutions, not necessarily you will have uh, the outcome that you are desiring, right? So,
mm.
uh, very. My wife always complains that I have the temper, right? So the only thing that
Oh, you're a passionate person. No one doubts that, Abilio.
I bring a lot of tension to the house. Uh, but I mean, I was having a problem with my fridge, a smart fridge, and
You can't hit those as hard as the old fridges because it just makes them worse now.
it was not working, right? So we lost some food, and I call the property manager, and hey, I need someone to come here, and the guy come and hey, Abelio, everything looks all right apart from the cooling system.
It's a great uh, cabinet you've got there for food that doesn't keep things cool.
so what else should a fridge be doing? So, and then I start because I get nervous with that. As you said, probably passion is a very romantic way of doing that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
And
a polite term. Yes. Don't get angry, get passionate.
and then I start arguing with him. Oh, are you crazy? What are you talking about? And my wife, hey, calm down, calm down. You're too upset. And as well,
Put the hammer down. You're not going to fix it by hitting it.
yeah. Anyway, I had a temper, so I am these
You had a
unfinished
passion.
building.
Yes.
I am this unfinished building with the scaffolds around, So and that's me. But that's true. And when I see in the market with competitors, and sometimes the competitors get amused when I say nothing against you, and we just need to think what is behind that, because
Mm.
in our work sometimes we go so deep in one detail, and that detail does not necessarily means yeah, the right answer. So hey, can we pause a little bit, step back? So
Take a breath.
anyway,
Bring perspective back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So look on from a different perspective, right? So let's look into another from another angles. And anyway, I like the idea of another conversation on the on Thomas Watson. Maybe you can help me with the preface of my book. So
Oh, excellent. Love to.
is getting there.
I
So
did, chapter 4. You're in chapter 4 at the moment.
yeah, chapter 4,
Making
and
great strides there. That's awesome.
yeah, I will get there.
I'll put it in my collection. I'll move this book out the way and I'll put it there. Okay.
Beautiful. Damon, I know
Or I put it on the Kindle.
that. Yeah, it will be the English version. The Portuguese version, it will be with my brother. He's vice president in a software company in Brazil, so he will do the preface over there and the Portuguese version over there. Here, the English version, it will be mostly a fundraising. So I will just pay my research costs and the editing costs, how to create an ISBN type of thing. I have no idea. I know how much it costs, but I will pay that, and the rest is fundraising. But the idea is to it is an invitation to think, right?
Mm.
So we are running a little bit over time.
Oh yes, I'm surprised. It's coming close. Well, I did get permission to extend into my dinner time tonight. I'm surprised I haven't had someone knocking at the door here.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So, Damon, thank you
Oh,
for
thank you.
all your time. I guess it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Fantastic. I love it. And
We even said we are just going to have a chat, didn't we? We said we're just going to have a chat about a few things. No real agenda today. Just have a chat about things we're passionate about.
nice. A message. Up to you. Final message.
Final message. Keep things simple. We overcomplicate how we build our foundation for lots of things. We allow too many things to distract us. Find the time to do it properly by keeping it simple. That's it.
I love it. Love it. That was pretty much it, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this very special kickoff session of Bits and Beer. And Damon, again, very thank you.
Thank you.
I like it. I love it. And let's do it again.
I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abilio. Thanks, everyone.
Hold on. We need the cheers.
Well, I've run out, so well, maybe the next session. Oh yeah, here you go. Oh no, there's a little bit left there. There we go. Thank you, Abilio. And look, in recognition of the lockdown still there in Auckland, I hope you have supplies of beer ready for the next episode.
Yeah, count on me.
Excellent. Good work, mate.
Cheers.
See you all.